Okay, what we're going to do in this vodcast is go over how to use Excel to make a graph for our mole ratio lab that we're working on. Okay, those of you who have not used Excel, it's a spreadsheet program, and there's a number of things you can do with spreadsheet programs. And for us, what we're going to use it for is graphing. All right, when you look at the interface or the screen of Excel, what you see are these blocks. And what you'll notice is that you can put numbers in the blocks, you can put words in the blocks, and you can also put equations in the blocks. The blocks are for entering data. So we're not going to get into the details of Excel. So basically what you're going to do is enter your data into your Excel spreadsheet the way I've entered mine. So I've got my mixture, the 6 different mixtures that I used. I have compound A, and then compound B, and if you remember, we wanted 50 total milliliters, so my first mixture is 0 of A, 50 of B, number 2 was 10 of A, 40 of B, etc. So I did that for the 6 mixtures. When you did this, you should have taken the temperature of those mixtures once you put them together, and as you can see with my data, my first temperature was 25, 29, 35, etc. So now I've got my 6 mixtures, what the ratios in the mixtures were, and the temperature after I mixed them together. So what I want to do is graph this data to figure out what the maximum temperature reached was. Now remember, the maximum temperature isn't necessarily 35. It may actually reach a higher temperature if we had a mixture of, say, 25 and 25, or something like that. So the way to determine that is by graphing the data. Okay, don't forget, if you need to go back and watch parts of this, just stop the video and rewind it and watch over. Okay, once you have your data put into the blocks on Excel, the next step is to make a graph. So what you're going to do is go up to Insert, and your Excel might look a little bit different. This is 2010. You might have the 2007 version. So go up to Insert, and you want to click on Scatter. The kind of graph we want has to have those dots there. So you want Scatter, and then you want to pick the one with just the dots. Don't pick the ones with the lines, the ones with just the dots. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this graph over a little bit to look at it. And notice that when you want to move something, just click and drag. Alright, what you can see is Excel is trying to graph all of these numbers, and it's having a tough time doing it. So what we need to do is tell Excel what we want on the x-axis and what we want on the y-axis. The way we do that is we put our cursor in the graph and we right-click. And what we want to do is click on Select Data. Once we do that, this editing box comes up. And you can see Excel has 3 different sets of data right now. Well, we're going to get rid of all of those sets and we're going to make our own set. So let's remove, remove, and remove. Now what we want to do is add a data series or a data set. So let's click Add, and what we want to do is graph our temperatures and mixtures as they moved up and then as they moved down. So what I did over here was I'm graphing my volumes of compound A. So I have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, and then I'm going to graph that versus the temperature. The reason I don't graph both of them is because Excel wouldn't understand what you mean by 0, 50, 10, 40, so we're just graphing one of them. And since we want our graph to go or have the intersection of y and x be at 0, I'm graphing A, so my x-axis will go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to call my first series of data ascending. So I type ascending into the series name. The next thing I need to do is select what I want to call my x values. And the way you do this is you click on that icon, and then what happens is Excel is waiting for you to enter the cells that you want to call the X series. So what I'm going to do is click and drag the data, whoops, Oh, now see what happened here is I missed the button. So what you've got to do is get rid of that and try again. I'm going to click and drag and let go. So now what Excel is doing is it's saying this is the data we want to call X. So go over here, click back on your icon, and now we want to do the same thing with Y. Click on its the icon. We want to call Y, or we want to call those temperatures our Y values. And then we're going to click OK. Let's click OK. Now what you're going to see, we have a nice graph here, and when we put a line on it, it would look good. But the problem is what we want to do is have a line going up in that direction and a line going up in that direction, and we want that intersection of those lines. So we need to treat this like two separate sets of data, or two lines. What we've done is treated it like one. So to change that, we're going to right click inside our graph. Whoops. We're going to go back to select data, and now what we're going to do is we're going to edit our series. So that's clicked. I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to go back to my X values. Now instead of picking all the X values, I'm going to pick only the ones that correspond to where the temperature is rising, 25, 29, 35. And I'm going to also change my Y values to those corresponding temperatures. And click OK. Okay, now what I need to do is include my other sets where the temperature starts to go down. So what I want to do is add a series. I'm going to call these descending. I'm going to click on my icon for X, and now I'm going to call these three X values, or I'm going to highlight these three X values. Click the icon, do the same thing for Y, but then click Get Your Temperature Data. Click the button and click OK. And we'll click OK and see what it looks like. Now we've got two nice lines, one going up and one going up in that direction. So what we need to do now is put equations to these lines. The way we're going to do that is put the icon on the cursor, right click, and you're going to click on Add Trend Line. Okay, we want to pick linear. There's other options, but ours is clearly linear. We want to display the equation on the chart because we're going to use that equation. And then because I want that line to go forward and past where it ends at that dot, I'm going to click on forward and I'm going to put 10 there and see what that looks like. And that's nice. The line goes by a nice distance. I'm going to click on my equation and maybe put it down here. And now I want to do the same thing with this line. Right click, add trend line, it's linear, display the equation. Now instead of going forward, which would make our line descend towards the x-axis, we're going to make it go backwards 10 spaces. And as you can see, it extends backwards. And I'm going to take this equation and move that up out of the way a little bit. And that's that point right there that we've talked about in the lab. So what we're going to do is take this equation, set it equal to that equation. Since they're both equal to y, we can say 0.5x plus 24.667 is equal to negative 0.475x plus 47.833. When we get that value for x, that's going to correspond to the exact volume of compound A that would reach the highest temperature. We can find the volume of compound B that would correspond to that by subtracting A from 50. And we'll talk about that a little bit in class. All right, the last thing that we want to do is we want to make this graph on its own sheet. So what you want to do is put your cursor in the graph again and right click. And then what you want to do is hit Move Chart. And you're going to have a choice, and we want to say New Sheet. Click OK. And now we have our graph in a nice in its own page, which we can modify and print and make nice. Okay, so what you're going to do then is go through and you're going to make it look a little bit nicer, and you're going to put some titles in here, or I'm sorry, some labels for the x-axis, labels for the y-axis, and some titles. And you can figure that out on your own. You can go to page layout. Where do we have this? Or do we have it? Chart tools. There we go. Chart title, axis title, legends, etc. So put a title, label the y-axis, label the x-axis, and then print this. In the title, though, make sure you put your name there. And again, don't forget to email questions to HannonInChemistry@gmail.com or ask the questions in class.